Okay, we are now in broadcast mode, and I have hit the record button. Let me just make sure it's recording, which it looks like it is doing. And we are starting to see some attendees join us, so that's great. Catherine, if you'd like to mute yourself, you can until we're ready, but so welcome everyone who's joining us. We're going to wait a few minutes until people arrive. Good morning if you're in a morning time zone. I think most of us are morning time zone. Some people might be in the middle of the night. Naturally, we have lawn services outside. Someone is mowing the lawn outdoors. Not my lawn, unfortunately, but my neighbors are being spruced up. So we are going to be using, for those of you, we've got a few people attending already. We're going to be using the Q&A window or Q&A to collect questions from you if you have them. We'll get started in a couple of minutes, but feel free to type questions into the Q&A as they come up. If you'd like to send a note in the chat window, you could also say hello there or type in questions, comments there. But most of the Q&A, most of your questions we'd like to collect in the Q&A. A few more people joining us. We'll do some introductions in just a minute. Couple more minutes. Looks like people are waking up and joining us. Lots of my classes this year, the students participated as they were eating cereal. So that was the common sight for us teaching this spring. So I'm used to people showing up with a cup of coffee, but the cereal was a new twist. So all right, got a few more people joining us. Welcome everyone. Those of you who are attending, feel free to raise your hand if you have a question, or you can just type in a question. Let us know that you're here. We'll get started in just a minute. Great, I see someone raise their hand. Do you feel free to type in a question if you have one. Cool. Oh, okay. I can actually see who's here. So terrific. So Good morning, everyone. I think I'll try and go ahead and get started slowly. This is an open house for the Biomedical Engineering Department. My name is Amy Lerner. I'm one of the faculty in Biomedical Engineering. And I'd like to welcome you to this open house. We still have a few people joining us. I want to start by just kind of orienting everyone. I'm going to be sharing some slides about our presentation today. You will have a chance to ask questions using the Q&A window. So thanks for sharing your questions. We will try and answer those as they come in. I am joined today by a couple. I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about what we're going to go over today. My hope is we'll start with some introductions, and then I'll highlight some information about the biomedical engineering curriculum. We'll talk about some special opportunities that our students have a chance to participate in and things that we often get questions about. And then at the end, we'll open it up for some more questions for you. So again, just to start with introductions, my name is Amy Lerner. I'm a professor in biomedical engineering. I've been with the department for more than 20 years, and I'm the chair of the undergraduate committee. So I often work with undergraduates as they're planning their curriculum. I am joined by Taimi Marple. Taimi is the undergraduate administrator, and she's on the line here and will help us with questions. You will all get to know Taimi as you do registration for classes. She really is the one who knows a lot of the rules and regulations and who to contact if you have questions. I'm also joined by Catherine Colon. Catherine is a rising senior in the program, and I'll turn it over to her a little bit later to tell you some of her experiences related to how she fits in sports and research and all kinds of things. So Catherine will also help us navigate some of the questions as they come up. So, okay. I'll also introduce you. These folks aren't here today, but this is our biomedical engineering faculty. We're really lucky to have a very dedicated faculty who are engaged in lots of the coursework that you'll take. Many of these faculty have undergraduates who work in their research laboratories. And so you'll have a chance to get to know them as your faculty advisors as well. Some of you will be assigned to a specific advisor who will work with you for the next 4 years. And so I think you'll notice that our faculty are quite diverse. We're really proud to have a diverse faculty that includes about 50% women, and that's not that typical in biomedical engineering. So I thought I'd start out with talking a little bit about what biomedical engineering can be. Some of you may be interested in biomedical engineering because of an interest in prosthetics, helping people to replace a limb, for example, or to be able to use their hands again. You may be interested in developing a device to monitor physiological symptoms or signals. This is a device that some of our students made to monitor respiration in babies in the neonatal intensive care unit. Perhaps you're interested in drug development. So this is a study, some pictures from a study that was developed in a drug treatment using nanotechnology to treat leukemia. Maybe you're interested in working directly with clinicians to develop medical devices that could be used to monitor health conditions or provide treatments. Or you may be interested in basic science research that introduces optics in understanding tissues in cancer or other disease states. whatever it is, there's lots of different things that biomedical engineering means to different people, but there's all different kinds of things that people can do with a degree in biomedical engineering, whether it's designing medical devices, developing new treatments, actually becoming a physician or a health physical therapist or a nurse, physician assistant. Lots of our students go on to develop, to do basic science research. Some students go on to teach. And some of our students develop, start new companies and are very entrepreneurial focused. So there's really all different kinds of things that you can do with a degree in biomedical engineering. What do our students do after graduation? Well, many of them go on to straight into a job in industry. Some go on for a master's degree first. Some choose to go on for a PhD in order to get involved in research. And about a quarter of them go into some medical field, whether it's going on straight to medical school, going on for nursing, physical therapy, orthotics and prosthetics, or a degree in physician assistants, for example. Some of our students go on for an MBA or into law school as well. So there's lots of different ways that our students can go along, in different paths they can take. And they go to many different schools, very reputable schools, and many different companies, whether they're in the Rochester area or across the country. Oops. So to get you from that starting point as a first-year student all the way to graduation, we've developed a core course structure in biomedical engineering, which starts off with an introduction to biomedical engineering that most students take first semester in your first year. And then in the sophomore year, there's an introduction to biomechanics and a course in biosystems and circuits in the spring semester. In the junior year, there's a signal systems and imaging course that in the fall, that's followed by a biomaterials and biomedical computation and statistics course in the spring. And then finally in the senior year, there's a quantitative physiology course and then a full year-long senior design sequence. So it's in that core of courses that you'll really get to know other students in the major and have an opportunity to learn more about the core basic knowledge in biomedical engineering. In addition to that core, though, our students are asked to choose a particular concentration, and there are 4 different concentrations. The first is referred to as cell and tissue engineering and might be for students interested in drug development or perhaps interested in the way that cells and tissues are formed to develop artificial tissues or organ replacements. The next is biomedical optics, which looks at the ways that we can use optical systems to understand tissues, or we can use lasers to interact with tissues. Biosignals and biosystems looks at things like the nervous system or electrical instruments and how they interact with the body. And then the last one is biomechanics, and this is a concentration for those who are interested in the mechanical aspects of devices or how sports injuries occur, for example, or how we can design prosthetics from a physical, mechanical point of view. So with each of these concentrations, what you're expected to do is take 3 courses that are focused in one engineering area, either mechanical engineering or optics or signals and systems, as well as one biomedical engineering course that applies that engineering knowledge to medical problems in biomechanics or signals and systems, for example. We have a neuroengineering course, cell and tissue engineering course, or biomedical optics. In addition to the concentration, so I have a question, and that's great. When do you choose the concentration? So let me go back to those concentrations. So you can take the Introduction to Biomedical Engineering course actually has an intro to each of those concentrations. And then you can explore a little bit more, but then during the sophomore year is generally when people have to start choosing a concentration. You can explore a little bit through the sophomore year, but usually once you're in the junior year, it's fairly well set in stone. But there's some crossover and some flexibility in these concentrations as well. In addition to the concentration, every student at the University of Rochester is expected to do what we refer to as clusters. Some students use those clusters to dig deeper and talk about a minor or develop a minor, and I think Catherine could talk about that a little bit later. That concentration, cluster can be either in the humanities or in the social sciences, and this is a list of some of the different clusters that are available for students in biomedical engineering to consider. Of course, it's necessary for you to take a certain number of courses in the math and basic sciences, and this includes calculus and differential equations, as well as physics, chemistry, biology, and then at least 2 additional science courses that might be in biology, organic chemistry, environmental sciences, neuroscience, etc. And you can choose your area of interest for those 2 additional courses. Many of our students get involved in research. You may have chosen Rochester because of the opportunity to get involved in research. And so students, in one way or another, almost 90% of our students participate in some kind of research project. Many of our courses incorporate research projects as well, and whether in the core or in some of the specialty courses, you'll be involved in research. Our faculty are very engaged in research, and so it's easy to get involved, whether it's in a course or through a summer research project, through employment in a laboratory, or if you're really interested but want to do it for credit, you can do an independent study where you get involved in research for credit. So let me turn it over to Catherine, who can tell you a little bit about herself and how she has managed to fit it all in. And then we'll come back to some of those other areas. Catherine, there you go.
Sorry if my unmute wasn't working. Hi everyone, so I'm Catherine and I'm a member of the class of 2021, so I'm a rising senior and I'm majoring in biomedical engineering and my concentration is in biomechanics. So Dr. Lerner was just talking about the different cluster options, and I started my cluster in philosophy, and then I realized I had a little bit of flexibility in my schedule and I was really interested in those classes, and so I turned it into my minor. So I will be finished with that this fall actually. I've also been doing research with Dr. Lerner for about 1.5 years in computational biomechanics, which I love. And I'm also a member of the varsity field hockey team here. So I definitely get to kind of sample a lot of the opportunities at Rochester, and I'm happy to answer any questions about kind of fitting into different opportunities here.
Great, thanks, Catherine. So we'll come back for some Q&A, and you can feel free to ask Catherine a little bit more. It's been great. Catherine has been working in my research lab, as she said, for a number of years, and it's a great way to apply some of what you're learning in the classroom and learn some new skills. And so it's really, many of us enjoy having undergraduates working with us in the lab. It's a great way to learn to juggle your schedule. I know that Catherine is busy in lots of different things. So why don't I keep going, and then we'll come back to some questions at the end. There's also, many people also ask us about master's degree and when can I start, and can I do a master's degree in 5 years? And there's a variety of different options for doing a master's degree. None of it is anything you have to think about as a first-year student, but you're fine. If you'd like to plan ahead, that's fine. At U of R, we have 3 different options. You can do a thesis-based research master's. Usually that takes 2 years. We also have a CMTI program, which is the Center for Medical Technology and Innovation, that has an emphasis on medical devices. That program is a 1-year program that you can apply to in your senior year and complete it in 1 additional year. It's also possible to do coursework, where a coursework master's, where you take some specialty graduate level courses, and in those courses, or in that approach, generally you can finish that in 1 year as well. You can apply as a junior, but typically students apply as a senior. So if you plan ahead, sometimes students can find a way to take some graduate courses during their senior year, so they can spread it out a little bit more. For the University of Rochester students, we don't require the graduate record, the GRE exam, since we've gotten to know you pretty well. And again, it's possible if you start research in a laboratory early, you may be able to get started and continue that research in the thesis-based master's. It's also very possible for students to do a pre-health option, so pre-med. Everyone always asks us about pre-med. I want to major in pre-med. Well, we don't have a pre-med major. We only have, we have the biomedical engineering major, but that's a fine way to do pre-med. With good planning, you can fit in all the pre-med requirements within the BME major with just a few careful selection of what your electives are, and thinking a little bit about the timing. The timing, though, isn't as important as people think, because many of our students, not just in biomedical engineering, but in all different majors, choose to do a gap year or two where they do something else that provides them a little bit more flexibility. And so we encourage you to think about that. Again, in addition to pre-med, we have nursing, physical therapy, physician assistant, medical physicists, people who plan cancer treatments, and people who go on to do orthotics and prosthetics. Here's an example of some of the folks from our BME major who've gone on for medical degrees, and I bring it up to share the fact that, this is Suzanne Giunta, who actually went and worked in the Peace Corps for a couple of years before going into medical school. Rochelle down below, or Rachel, actually worked for a couple of years in a research lab, got excited about research, but also realized that she did go on to medical school. And so she came back to do medical school after a few years out. Okay. Emo is now an anesthesiology fellow, and he did a post-bac program for a year before applying to medical school. And Ken Fox went ahead and went straight in with the BME degree and applied and got in, moved ahead straight into the medical school. He's now a neurosurgeon. So it's possible to do a variety of different things for the gap year. So the medical school can, a master's degree is a common way to do a gap year, but there's lots of different options for that. Sometimes it's a master's in research, sometimes it's our medical device master's can be a really nice option for a gap year. But again, there's lots of different options for what you can do for that gap year. Many of our students are interested in study abroad. Again, not something you have to worry about yet for as a first-year student, but the earlier you start planning, the easier it is to fit in. Something like 10 to 20% of our students now do study abroad. Generally, it's either the spring of the sophomore year or the fall of the junior year, but it could also be the fall of the spring. It requires some planning, but it's very possible to do, and being an engineering student is no reason to think that you can't do study abroad. The schedule is packed, but we've found a variety of programs that work really well with our program, and so these are some examples of places that our students have gone to do some kind of study abroad experience. Sometimes it's a full semester, sometimes it's a shorter education abroad experience where they do it over a summer break or during the in between sessions. So it's definitely possible to do that. Here's an example of one of this is a student who helped me with the info session before, and she shared this awesome picture, and I just love it, and I'm jealous that I wasn't able to go to New Zealand with her, but she was able to do a study abroad and is also doing research. Some students can do research during their study abroad. There's a number of schools that invite students to do research as independent study, as a course during the study abroad. There are also some programs that allow you to do research over the summer. So a number of our students have gone to Germany for a summer research program, which isn't taking courses, it's just doing research. And that's actually a paid experience in Germany. for doing research. That's another way to do study abroad experience. So some of you may be just thinking about a variety of different majors and you're not sure about BME as your major, but I want to make sure you know that you can also do a minor in biomedical engineering. You may be interested in focusing on chemical engineering, but want to have a specialty in biomedical engineering as well. Maybe you're interested more in robotics, but you want to do a little bit of biomedical engineering. So whether it's a science discipline or another engineering discipline, it is possible to do a minor. You have to complete basic math requirements, biological sciences. Everyone takes BME 101 or some other biomedical engineering course. You have to do at least 2 BME courses and 1 additional engineering course. So it's got a fair number of requirements, but that some of them can overlap with your other sequence that you're doing. If you're interested in not in biomedical engineering and you're thinking about doing a major that's in the humanities or the social sciences, you can do a cluster in biomedical engineering as well. You couldn't do this if you are majoring in another engineering discipline, but if you're majoring in something else, there are a variety of clusters that we've developed to just get a taste for biomedical engineering. And generally these all start with that BME 101 course. So if you're just exploring, if you jump in and take BME 101, there's still other directions that you could go. So I want you to know that if you're really not sure, jumping in and taking BME 101 is going to allow you to go in lots of different directions, and it may still wind up being a cluster in biomedical engineering. So the typical first semester in biomedical engineering includes that BME 101. It includes some kind of math course for most students. What that is varies depending on what kind of AP scores you have, if any, or what experience you've had with calculus in high school. And so we will help you figure out what the right starting point is for math, but that can be variable. Most students start with chemistry as well, unless they have AP chemistry, in which case we'll talk to you about what the right starting point is. And then most students start either with their humanities and social science course or with a required writing course. And again, we can work with your faculty advisor to select what that is. There are lots of variations to this though. Later on, and we're not going to go through them all today, later on in the summer, once you've been assigned to a faculty advisor, we will do a more detailed webinar that will go through all those possible variations, and then you can discuss with your advisor the exact things that you'll take. But for most of you, it will look like this. I do see someone asking about lab and workshop, and that's variable. Many of the science courses will have a lab. Chemistry will have a lab. The math will definitely have a workshop. I believe chemistry has a workshop as well. Every course, when you go to register, your faculty advisor or peer advisor will explain what you have to sign up for each one. But often there is something more than just the lecture. There's often a smaller group session as well, but it varies by course. Okay, so don't worry too much about the details of the variations of this because there's lots of different options. But this is the general structure, what everyone is taking. Again, BME 101 is designed to give you an introduction to what biomedical engineering is all about, an introduction to what the different concentrations are, an introduction to what it is to think like an engineer and to do problem solving like an engineer, and also just a way to make sure that everyone is kind of at the right place in terms of their preparation with using computer or using equations to solve problems and things like that. Okay.
Dr. Leonard, going back to the topic of labs and workshops, would you mind kind of clarifying what the difference is between a lab and a workshop?
Yeah, so usually a lab, it's a great question, and again, it varies, but usually when we refer to a lab, it is some kind of hands-on exercise or working with data that either you have collected or someone else has collected, and talking about, often a lab refers to an experiment in some way, whether it's one that you're doing or one that you're learning about. Workshops tend to be a little bit more problem solving. they may or may not have to do with an experiment, but they may be trying to solve a problem. And actually, Catherine, maybe I'll turn it over to you. You've done both of these. Does that sound like a good description to you? Anything you want to add?
Yes, I would definitely say, yeah, labs are more experimental. So you would have labs in most of your science and engineering courses, and especially in chemistry, you'll be working with different chemicals, and you'll have biology labs. Then the engineering labs are hands-on, and eventually you'll take like circuits classes. And then workshops, like Dr. Lerner was saying, are definitely smaller, and they're great opportunities to kind of collaborate with your other peers and solve problems that are usually given to you by your workshop leader. But it's a small class setting where you can really work through different topics that you're learning in the larger lecture.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's a really good thing to mention. The workshops are often led by students. So these are, instead of being lectured at by a professor in the workshops, they're often led by a upper level student who's taken the course before. And so you get to know some of the other students, and it really tends to be a more collaborative working experience than you get in the bigger lecture sections. So, okay. That's all I had, and I do see there's a whole bunch of questions. So why don't I see there's something about it, what an independent study is. So maybe I'll answer that one, and then Catherine, you can find the next one for me. So for the independent study, generally so when you work in a research lab, either working on a project, and it can be even remote, it could be doing a literature research, it could be running experiments yourself, it could be, if you're working with a faculty member and perhaps other graduate students in the lab to get involved in the research process. Sometimes you can do that for pay. Some faculty will have a research grant that they are able to pay students to do that. In other cases, you can do that for credit. So you're expected in your curriculum to do a certain number of elective credits, and this is a really nice elective credit that you can do. And so you can do this where what you would be expected to work in the lab for maybe 10 hours a week, and then often write up a report at the end of the year, or maybe periodic reports throughout the semester, and the instructor would grade you on that. And so that would go on your transcript as a research experience. And it wouldn't be a paid experience. You can't get paid and get credit at the same time, but you can do one or the other. Sometimes people want to do it for credit because they're so excited about it, they want it to show on their transcript. Sometimes the research faculty doesn't have money for you to do the research, but they could do an independent study. And so that's a good way to get started. Sometimes faculty want you to do independent study first, and then they'll pay you once you've gotten trained up in how to do the research. So there's lots of different variations, but the gist of it is it's usually 10 to 15 hours a week, but doing research with a faculty mentor. Okay. What about what's next?
So while we're talking about research, would you mind talking about if people can research while studying abroad and what those opportunities might look like?
Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit before, there is, I know, for instance, we've had a number of students go to Australia, and there's a research program that our students have been able to work in research laboratories while they're in Australia. The summer research in Germany, you actually pick a different lab, and that's actually a paid research experience over the summer. It's not classes, but they can do that. And the other is, it might be an independent study in the same way that you would do it here, but you would do it at another school. It all depends on the other school. So, okay. While we're doing questions, I'm going to just scroll through some pictures of, the Rochester Gergen Hall. This is Gergen Hall. Oops, let me go back. This is Gergen Hall, which is the home of the Biomedical Engineering and Optics departments. And this is one of our educational laboratories that is used in a number of our circuits and our BME 101 lab. So that's where you would be for some of those labs. So, Catherine, something else? So they were talking about yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
There are a few questions about just the logistics of filling out different forms that an upcoming form that's due next week, and where are people supposed to write which classes they want to take next year.
Yeah.
So there's some confusion on filling it out.
So I will tell you that I did not know the form was required, but this is, I would say, the first thing is I wouldn't worry about it too much, because we can change whatever you write down later. You'll have an opportunity to register later. But generally, anyone who's interested in biomedical engineering should be listing BME 101. Okay, that's a typical course for anyone in biomedical engineering. You should be doing, most of you should be doing some kind of math course. If you have taken AP calculus, then you may be able to skip one of the early math courses. If most of you should be signing up for chemistry, it's Chem 131, I believe. And then you can choose from a list of Writing 105 courses, or you can start to explore something that might be in your humanities or social science courses. It's not binding. You shouldn't worry if you don't get it quite right. I think if you picked BME 101, chemistry, and math, we could fill in the others. The writing courses, though, I will say there are a whole bunch of different versions of Writing 105 that are based on a different topic. If you find one that's interesting to you, I would go ahead and list it, because those can fill up fast. So finding something that's interesting to you is important. Half of you will do Writing 105, and half of you will do something else, something like that. So if you don't get into a Writing 105, don't worry about it. It's a required course during the first year, but many of you will do it in the fall, and many of you will do it in the spring. So the humanities, the social sciences could be a language, it could be an English class, it could be history, it could be film studies, it could be philosophy, it could be a variety of different things. Does that help? I hope. What else? Something else, Catherine?
So kind of jumping back to the topic of research, someone's saying, so summer research is pretty common, and is there funding available to help pay for summer housing? So I can also talk about that if you'd like.
Catherine, why don't you talk about that?
So I would definitely say summer research is pretty common. I did summer research on campus last summer, and I'm doing technically summer research this summer, but from home. So I'm fortunate enough that I can do some of my work remotely. But there is funding available, and there are like grants you can apply for through a program at the school to help pay for summer housing. So last year I lived off campus, but like really close to campus within walking distance. And there's also the option to stay in dorms on campus, which is more affordable, and the dining halls are also open during the summer. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, there's a variety of options for the summer. There's a number of special programs for research in the summer. Some faculty just hire people for the summer. It's something that you plan ahead for, but it isn't hard to get. We often encourage people to look at research at another school, at our school near their home or somewhere else, and we can work with you to find those opportunities as well. Since you can do research at Rochester during the year, sometimes people like to try somewhere else as well. So, okay.
Let's see. So there are a couple questions. Well, I guess one that's very relevant to the current situation is if it's possible to defer to the spring of 2021 as a BME major, and if we'd still be able to graduate on time if we were to defer a semester.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I think we often have students who are transfer students, and so in that case, so the BME 101 is a requirement, and you might have to take that in your sophomore year instead. I think that deferring, If you mean deferring completely and finishing, and therefore finishing in 7.5 instead of 8 semesters, that's hard, right? That's going to be tricky to do that. If you mean deferring and taking an additional semester at the end, then maybe we could do it by juggling some of the courses around a little bit. I know that all of our courses are being planned for both remote and students on campus. So if it's possible to not defer, but to start remotely, that certainly should be doable. All of the classes will be possible to complete in a remote fashion. I hope that answers the question. If you want to, anything else?
Along the lines of the curriculum, someone's asking if when you explained the path for biomedical engineering, it looked like there was not a BME course requirement freshman year spring semester. So they just want to clarify that that's correct, and if it would be preferred to take writing in the second semester.
I think the writing and that, I mean, that's an interesting, you're correct. There is no required course in the spring of the first year. And so you should take either a writing or a humanities or social science each semester. But which one you prefer to put which semester is variable. Some people love to write, and so taking that early is good. Some people hate to write, and so doing it the second term is better. It's variable. Some people, if you want to take economics instead of a more writing-oriented course, you may want to balance it that way. That's something where you have some flexibility, and again, you could discuss it. It could depend on whether you get the writing course that you want, but balancing that out, it really is quite variable depending on what your preferences are. One semester is, I mean, that you'll take the same number of courses both semesters. So typically, everyone takes 4 courses in the fall. You're not allowed to overload in the first semester. But if everything goes really well the first semester, in the second semester, you might be allowed to take some additional courses, and then you can start adding some flexibility. So, okay. Anything else? What kind of companies? So I'll go back to that pie chart that I showed you, the really crazy busy pie chart. And I'll say that, you know, these are companies that our students have gone on to work for, but they also are places, some of them are places where students have gotten summer internships. We've gotten summer internships at Medtronic happens quite a little bit. We've had students work at DePuy and Zimmer over the summer. Many students do research at one of the universities as well. We've had students work at Phillips over the summer, I believe. We've had students at ConMed over the summer, and a number of times the students who work at somewhere over the summer, then they develop a relationship and they can get a position there after they graduate. ConMed has been a common one. Taimi, can you think of any other particular ones for the summer? It's really all over, and I think it depends a little bit on what their what's nearby. Students often start to look where they're at home, but Johnson & Johnson is another one, and there are some summer programs that are available at companies like Johnson & Johnson. Bausch & Lomb, you have people at summer. So lots of different places. Anything else? What kind of support is available for students pursuing entrepreneurship? So I'm always tickled when I see this one. Let me see, where's Sonovex? Right here is a company that one of our students started, actually. So there's a program at the university, or a Center for Entrepreneurship at the university that is the AIN Center for Entrepreneurship. And the AIN's AIN The AIN Center has a variety of classes and workshops and different options for students who are interested in entrepreneurship. There is a master's program called TEAM, which is Technical Entrepreneurship and Management, and it too is a one-year master's program that you could take after. It's about half engineering and half business courses. And so that might be, if you wanted to do a little bit, not do an MBA necessarily, but get involved in entrepreneurship with a master's degree, that's something you could do. But there are a number of courses and also just workshops and so forth that are available. We also have downtown here in Rochester, there's an incubator where students can even work on a project there and get mentoring in a sort of an incubator space. The Retner Center is a fabrication space where students can work in a machine shop and 3D printing for fabricating, and sometimes that is related to entrepreneurial interests that they have. Okay, so there's really quite a lot. We have I think we're one of the few universities that has a vice provost for entrepreneurship. So it's really embedded in Rochester's DNA to think about entrepreneurship. So I think that you would find some good support here. Anything else? If there's anyone who would like to just ask a question out loud, I can unmute you so you can just ask it if that would be easier. Just raise your hand. So what are opinions on research versus internships and co-ops? I think that they're both are good, and what we hope that people will try and do is both, right? So to use one of your summers for research or one of your summers for some kind of internship. Probably more people do research, at least on campus, more people do research. But there are certainly more and more students are doing internships at companies. We don't have a formal co-op program required, but it is absolutely possible to work in the summer for a company. There are even some students who work part-time. Sometimes students work part-time at a company or work during the summer for a company and then continue part-time, even remotely sometimes. Or there are a few local companies that people have been able to work with. So I think I don't have an opinion about which is better. The research may be more popular, partly because it's easier to do on campus at Rochester. Our medical center is very close by, and so when you talk about research at Rochester, it's not just with biomedical engineering faculty. You can also do research with any faculty over at the medical center, any research lab over at the medical center. And so there's lots and lots of different options for research. I hope that answers the question. Anything else? So I just want to kind of wrap up what we're going to do. We are going to record, we have been recording this session, and so this will be available if you want to watch again or you want to share it with someone else. We will be emailing you all, and once you're assigned a faculty advisor, we'll do another session in more detail about what courses to select. Whatever form you're submitting early next week, it again is not binding. Go ahead and do your best with that. We always have done that, and we don't usually do any orientation this early in the summer. So you're way ahead of schedule. So don't worry about getting it wrong. We can adjust that later, but we'll go through some more details with your faculty advisor. You will have a chance to Zoom with them one-on-one, ask them questions, tell them about your career interests, go over what you have for AP, if anything, go over what concerns or courses you have some concerns about, and develop kind of a strategy. And that'll happen just around the 4th of July, that either just before or just after that. So I see, sorry, I'm distracted. I saw your email about will we send emails? We have both your emails. The first email we sent to your non-U of R address, and I think we'll probably do that again over the summer, just to make sure that people are connected. But we will reach out. We'll try and make sure we have everyone signed up to meet with an advisor before you need to register. So let me actually keep going. I want to give you my contact information as well. Again, this is the Gergen Hall. This is where my office is. That's what it looks like. It does sometimes snow. This is my contact information. I'm best reached by email. You're welcome to email me with questions that you have. If you're still not sure what to do for this form that's due next week, feel free to email me. There is also the link for our undergraduate research pages. Feel free, again, to contact me with questions that come up. And we'll be in touch and later in the summer to get you some more detail about your faculty advisors. Those that we know who they're going to be, but they haven't been assigned to each individual yet. But once you're assigned to that advisor, you'll meet with that advisor at least once a semester, if not more, in order to go over details for registration and so forth. So with that, I think we are done, unless anyone else has any. Are all advisors professors? So thanks, Blaine, that's a great question. Right now in biomedical engineering and in all the HAGEM schools, we use faculty advisors, so professors in the biomedical engineering department as a faculty advisor. So you will be assigned to one professor who will stay with you for those 4 years. In addition, you'll have an advisor in the HAGEM school who will be able to answer questions that sometimes are more general about the overall requirements for the school, opportunities across campus. And so you can ask them as well. There's also a set of peer advisors, so students who you can talk to. And sometimes the questions that you have are something that you want a student's opinion about what class to take or what elective, and your faculty may say, you know, that's a good question for a peer advisor. So rather than having a single advisor, you actually have a number of different options for advisors, but we make sure that every biomedical engineering student has a faculty member, a professor who can answer their questions related to classes, as well as sort of longer term career planning and thinking about things like internships or research and so forth. That doesn't mean you can't ask other faculty some of those questions too. So often people use the professors from their classes as sort of informal advisors. Or if you decide that you're interested in one particular concentration and you've been assigned to an advisor who has a different research specialty, we'll do some informal advising across the different specialty areas. So our faculty are very dedicated to undergraduates and answering questions. So I think you'll find that there's lots of different people who can answer your questions. Okay. Anything else? Okay. If not, we'll leave it open for a second here, but thank you very much for joining us. We're really excited to meet you all in the fall, one way or another. And we are, glad you could join us here. Happy to answer any questions that come up down the line. Okay. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye. Okay, I'm going to stop recording at this point.